So today I'm going to analyze the poem There's a Certain Slant of Light by Emily Dickinson. And I'm going to divide my analysis into three parts. The first one is the introduction, and I'm going to talk about the general speaker, data publication, project summary, theme, and tone. And in the body part, I will talk about the figurative language, sound device, and structure. Finally, I'm going to conclude the whole presentation. So first, here is the poem, and I'll read it for you. There is a certain slant of light, winter afternoons, that oppresses like the heft of the cathedral tunes. Heavenly hurt it gives us, we can find no scar, but internal difference where the meanings are. None may teach it, any, 'tis the sealed despair, and imperial affliction send us of this air. When it comes, the landscape listens, shadows hold their breath. When it goes, 'tis like the distance on a look of the death. So, this poem is written in 1861, and the genre of this poem is lyrical poem, and the speaker is Emily Dickinson. The length of the poem is 4 stanzas, and if we try to translate this poem into really foreign language, it will be: in winter afternoons, there is a certain slant of light which is oppressive in the same way the speaker may feel oppressed by the weakness of the cathedral music. It can give us heavenly hurt with no scar, but internal difference. Where are the meanings? No one may teach it. It is sealed despair and an imperial affliction that throngs. They are sent by air. When the light comes, landscapes listen, shadows hold their breath. When the light goes, it's like a distant look on the dead people. So what is the theme of this poem? Well, I think there are generally 3. The first one is the suffering, because we can see that in the whole poem, the poet is kind of like suffering from the slant of light, and which oppresses her and giving her like a kind of internal difference. So that's why the second theme of this poem is transformation. I think the certain slant of light actually represents the religion's meaning, which is God. So the author is also revealing her uncertainty about the God and her feeling of doubt, and finally she is transformed and she's like actually closer to the God. Talking about the tone of this poem, I think the tone is generally depressive and reflective and calm. And by saying depressive, we can see this from like words like heavily hurt, 'tis the sealed despair on the look of death, because hurt, despair, and death all like conveys the meaning of depression. And as for reflective, it actually relates to transformation, and it can be revealed by the internal difference, no scar. And as for the calm and peaceful tone, I think it is conveyed by like the imagery, like the slant of light in winter afternoons, because winter gives us a sense of like gloomy atmosphere. Speaking of the special terms, I choose 2. The first one is heft. The choice of heft here instead of weight, which could be actually have the fit the rhyme and scheme more closely, emphasize the paradoxically uplifting aspect of this oppression. Because while weight gives the reader solely an image of a downward force, heft implies a movement upward, albeit a difficult one. So basically, that's while the slant of light is oppressive, it creates difficulty for the speaker, and the diction makes it clear that it's kind of the uplifting. So by using this term, the author can convey the meaning of transformation, because although she is kind of oppressed by the light, she's struggling with this light. The second term is cathedral tones, and I think it is a kind of religious implication. So basically, by seeing this term, we can immediately recognize that the author is trying to reveal her rebellion or her transformation to the of her will towards the God or towards Christianity. Then I'm going to talk about how the author uses some figurative languages. The first one is by using simile in the first stanza, and the author is trying to say that the oppressed is like the heft of the cathedral tunes. So basically, the use of simile of cathedral tunes makes the whole theme more understandable, as it seems to fit with the Dickinson's view of religion, faith. So faith and religion or God are not really easy for her if we review her past life experience. So they have a really great difficulty, and an oppressive nature about them makes the author feels a kind of heavily hurt, as mentioned in the later in stanza 2. So, but I think the simile is trying to showing the indirect rebellion of the author. Another figurative language is personification. So in this here in stanza 4, the author says the landscape listens and the shadows hold their breath. So she's trying to make them more human. So I think you listen and hold their breath conveys a sense of carefulness. So it reveals how the transformation occurs, and besides the death rhyme. Besides, we can say that the 8 may represent the arrival of death. So, and the rhyme between breath and death is kind of like a symbol for life. So we can say that death is not purely negative, and also the landscape and shadows are personified to the living and the dead. So I think the author is trying to say that God exists everywhere, and so that's how the transformation occurs. It occurs when it arrives. The author also uses metaphor to further emphasize her meaning. So here I found three about 5 metaphors. The first one is the slant of light. I think it describes the depression as well as a sense of religion. So I think the light actually represents the oppression of God. And I think winter represents death, because when thinking about winter, we think how plants are dead and animals go to hibernate. So I think winter gives a sense of gloomy atmosphere, so it kind of represents death. And the cathedral tunes is a metaphor for religion, like Christianity, that Emily Dickinson always rebels with. And in the third stanza, the imperial affliction, I think it actually represents internal transformation. We can see that from stanza 1 to stanza 4, the author is actually experience a process from rebellion to acceptance of the Christianity or said religion. I think in the last stanza, as it appears twice, represent the affliction, or the God, or the death. So basically, it is of kind of religious meaning, and I think different people may have different analysis of this but I think it is kind of an emphasis of how people finally accept, or how the author finally accepts God. Finally, the author also uses imagery. The image of winter as well as the music adds a gloom to the poem. the overcast light we get, the low angles of the sun and all the surfaces the light can reflect off, give audience a sense of oppression as if the death comes closer. And I also think that since winter, like when thinking about winter, we really think that it has like dim lights. So I think this slant of light actually may also represent the spring, the coming of the spring. So it represents the transformation of the season. So basically, I think it also implies the theme of this poem. After talking about the figurative language, I'm now going to analyze like the sound devices. The first one is consonants. So I found two. I specifically found two of them in this poem. The first one is in the first stanza, the use of slant of light. The use of two T sounds gives kind of swiftness sense to audience that like this light is going through our heart really fast. So it also implies the hurtness that the author like gives in the second stanza. The second pair of consonants is the breath and death. I think the sound gives is a sound when a snake twitches their tongue, and so it kind of adds some gloomy atmosphere. And also, I think this sound also like the breath and death. They also represent it. They are also implication of the transformation because it seems that these two are opposite with each other, but actually, I think the author is trying to say after death it is a breath. So then I'm going to analyze the meter and syllable. So in this poem, the syllable of the fourth stanza are the first two are 7575, and stanza 3 has 7585, and stanza 4 has 8585. I think I don't know if the author specifically wants her audience to find, or it's just a random action. But I think the 75 and 85 actually implies a sense of transformation. Like the first two stanza are how the author feels the sense of light, and the third stanza is a kind of transition between rebellion and acceptance. And finally, in the fourth stanza, the author finally accepts the existence of God. And so 7-5 and 8-5 are kind of the representation of transformation. Talking about a meter, the author uses alternation between trochaic tetrameters and iambic trimeters. I think the use of these meters actually gives us kind of more musical rhythm of this poem. And besides, the author also uses dashes, which is a really significant feature of Emily Dickinson's poem. And I think the general function of dash in this poem is the dash acts as a bridge between ideas. And I want to specifically talk about the stanza 4, the last dash. Since the poem does not end in a period and instead ends with this dash, we are left feeling as if the poem continues elsewhere. Perhaps it continues in the same place the sun of light has gone off to. So actually, I think this dash leads deeply into our own heart, the audience heart, that there is a kind of internal difference also in our minds. So I think the dash is actually also representative of the transformation, which is the theme of the poem. The author also uses punctuation in this poem, and mostly the lines in this poem are unstopped lines, except three parts. The first one is line 3 and 4. By using the injunctions, the author is actually trying to emphasize the quickness of the light and also the continuity of it. because by using end stop lines, we usually tends to slow down when the sentence ends. But when used in injunctions, it will encourage you to move right along to the next line without pausing. So I think that's why I think it gives us a sense of quickness and continuity. In line 11, 12, I think the author is trying to emphasize how the painfulness the author feels. So and also the air is what we like, we're under the pressure of the atmosphere. So I think it also implies a sense of oppression. In line 15 to 16, the author writes, when it goes takes like distance on the look of death. So combining both the injunctions and the dash, I think the author is trying to emphasize how remote the the God is, and in this case, we know that she has already accepted the existence of God. So I think here she's trying to emphasize how remote she is with the God. So she's trying to imply that she wants to be closer. In conclusion, this poem very closely describes a fairly common theme of Emily Dickinson's, that of change as a fearful but illuminating process, both painful and essential. Here this hour of change is embodied in a certain slant of light that becomes the place of departure for the transformation. So this slant of light is oppressive, but this is no simple, purely negative oppression. So in this case, the author is trying to say that I have accepted the existence of God and I have changed, so I'm trying to be closer and closer to the God. Thank you. So here are the glossary of the certain um, styles of language that I used, and here are sources. Thank you very much.